Welcome to the Daily Edge. Today we have a very special guest with us, serial entrepreneur, banker, author of It's All About Relationships, Eddy Arriola. Welcome to the show.
It's so great to be here. Love your family and everything you guys are doing.
Well, what's cool is that we both come from family businesses, family of entrepreneurs, and our families are connected through wild stories. Like my dad when he was in the retail business, and then connecting with your brother, Dan. And I've been on Dan's podcast now. And so to bring it all full circle and get all the brothers together.
I love it.
Super glad to have you here. Give us a little bit of your background, how you grew up in an entrepreneurial family, how you started a bank and took it all the way to exit, and some of what got you here to eventually writing this book.
Yeah, so I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. I was one of these people that I didn't know you can go through corporate America or, get a job and do something. I just always saw people, they either come to this country or they graduate from college or don't graduate from college, and you just start a business. You learn a trade or a business and you just figure it out. So when I got out of college, I went to work for my father for a little bit. But the model I knew was, you start your own business. So I started a handful of businesses and worked with two of my brothers in starting another business and growing that. But I always had that bug of I wanted to start a business that I wasn't comfortable with, and I wanted to learn a whole different industry, which is a crazy reason to start a business as opposed to like a customer problem.
Sounds like you're a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, and during right before the financial crisis, didn't know it was a financial crisis, just thought it was an opportunity. Decided to start a bank, and a bank called Apollo Bank. We built the bank through the financial crisis, originally as what's called a de novo bank, a startup bank. And we ended up acquiring a couple little banks and building it up. And we had an incredible business with a great reputation, a great team, and we had a lot of success. But we sold the bank in October of 2022.
So you kind of glazed over, right? Like just growing up in an entrepreneurial family and just like seeing and being exposed to like, this is what the expectation is you figure out the thing you're going to do and then you go do it for yourself. It's part of the reason I work with Junior Achievement, because I love trying to open up kids' pathways in their brains to that, because I grew up in that environment, but around a bunch of kids who didn't, and they were like, they thought my dad was the coolest because he was an entrepreneur. And I was like, you guys don't understand what happens Monday through Friday. Like it's chaos, But so can you help me understand how you developed the courage to start a bank? Like, number one, I don't even know anything about my money. So like managing other people's money seems unbelievably difficult. And then starting a business in a banking industry that feels super regulated and like all kinds of like stuff I don't want to touch. How'd you develop the courage to do that?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I had a couple advantages. One was I was so young, I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Okay.
And so not knowing how deep and dark the waters were going to be is an advantage, right?
Sure.
And that's why entrepreneurship, I believe, is sort of a young person's game, because you don't have as much to risk. That the expectation I'm going to be away from my kids. You don't really understand sort of the impact of that.
Yeah.
So that was one. Second, I just had a very strong network of friends that really believed in me more than I did.
Okay.
And believed than I believed in myself, and they were just. Again, they didn't know what they were encouraging me to do, but they were just super supportive and said, you have these skills and those skills, and you may be lacking in technical expertise, but you can either acquire that or learn it and that sort of thing. So I think that, those are certainly two of the advantages. And the third, and not...
I was going to say, that in itself feels like a great segue to the book.
Yeah, and the third, quite frankly, I had deep relationships with a variety of different people that were willing to help, encourage, and I knew that they would help me further down the way. Mm-hmm. And I'd shared with someone the other day. They go, "When did you start, Apollo Bank?" And I go, "Well, I kind of started thinking about it and going through the effort in 2008. But as I've pulled back and gotten away from it, I'm like, no, I actually started many years before, because the people that helped me were people that I had met, 5 years before, 10 years before.
The relationships that you had developed.
That's right.
So you wrote this book recently, right? It's all about relationships, which I think is one of the greatest titles of any book ever, because it's what my dad raised me on, and it's what I know. I write about it in my book. It was the thing that led me to success in coaching. Yeah. The only reason I ever got a job ever in coaching was because of the relationships I developed on the staff, which in your book you title those people the bosses.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? So help us understand how the foundation of the book was created, what the idea was behind it. And then like I love the fact that you break up like the audience segments of relationships that you build. Take us through some of that.
Yeah. So two things. I wrote a book because I wanted to write a book. I said, I don't want to be on my deathbed.
Again, you are glutton for punishment. I want to open a bank and I want to write a book. Two of the hardest things you can do in life.
It's very hard because you have to learn. Well, how do you write a book?
Right,
how you have to deconstruct it.
Right.
And what is, you're writing it for, at least in my case, I was writing it for myself and a specific audience, but an audience has to, there's a way that they're willing to read a book.
Sure.
It's gotta be a certain amount of pages and broken down.
Right.
So those sorts of things. The original idea was to write a strategy book, and it was going to kind of be like a field guide for strategy for a CEO. And I'm like, the book I always wanted was that sort of strategy book. But as I started as a board member, as an investor, as an advisor, and as a CEO coach, we kind of worked our way through strategy pretty quickly. We did like an all-day session, and but when the session was over talking about strategy or talking about finance, I'm like, well, what's really bothering you? My CFO. My investor. this. And it was all about people and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this is how I solved this or this. And I realized that I had a framework. And I realized that any result I had in life was because of relationship. And whenever things didn't go the way I wanted it to be, it's because I didn't have the right relationship. And I didn't lay that down,
that
in
soundbite right there. Anytime I didn't get the result I was looking for was because I didn't have the relationship. I never look at the inverse. I always say the same thing. Every good thing that's ever happened to me in my life has happened because of a relationship. I've never said the inverse, which is so powerful that you said that. So this framework is then what you started to put into this book?
Yeah. So as I started to work with people, I would talk about relationships, and they would interpret it as, networking or sales, or they would just kind of focus on one arena. Oh no, I've had a lot of success because I'm really good with clients, or I have a lot of success because I'm really good with my team. But I'm like, well, especially as a leader, there's a bunch of different what I call arenas that you need to get right.
Right.
And so I have it framed as your bosses, your team, your customers, your community, what I call your collaborators, which aren't the people that directly work for you or that you have control over, but it still matters. Things like lawyers, consultants, bankers, investment bankers, creative, collaborators. And the last thing is yourself. You got to, in order to have a great life and a great team, you've got to really take care of yourself, and that's your responsibility. That doesn't fall on anyone.
Where does family fall into that for you?
I throw that in yourself.
Into yourself.
Yeah. And I also wanted the book to be, I could have written an entire book on each and every chapter.
Yeah.
And but I put family into yourself, and that's where especially as a leader, as a CEO, you have to have your family involved. You have to play an active role in your family.
Yeah.
And that falls on you, and you have to have, again, sort of a framework and take responsibility for it.
So I can, from my perspective, and I think working with other people, it would sound like that's almost overwhelming. Like, whoa. Particularly for somebody who's like introverted, to be like, that's a lot of relationships that I have to manage. You and I know because I don't know. For me, it just became natural for me because I watched my dad do it for so long. And even sometimes I'm in awe of his ability to manage relationships. How do you ease some of that for people to make it manageable to deal with all those arenas?
Yeah, so great question, because that's right. The purpose of the book is to create a framework.
Right.
Actually, let me pull back. The purpose of the book is to identify the why you have to do it. You just can't focus on one, because in order to accomplish all the things you want, whether it be in your business or your life, you really have to have a perspective of, I can't just focus on one area, because then it won't all work out.
Right.
And then it's the who. So it can't just, you have to incorporate your family, you have to incorporate your collaborators, your community. And the second part of the book is providing you with a framework to do it. So you can't do it all at once, but you have to identify, where do I want to go? What are my priorities in life, or priorities in my business? And the second part of the book, I call it the CARPE framework, which is connect, align, respond, prioritize, and then evaluate. And
hit it for me one more time. That was too fast.
Yeah, so it went very fast. So connect, align, respond, prioritize, and then evaluate. And it's sort of a circle. You can start at the C and work your way through, but at different times you find yourself in a relationship, a business relationship, a partner, a customer, and you say, well, where am I in this? Am I at the early stage, which is, how do I find a way to connect? And there's so many there's so many bad examples where someone's like, I'm reaching out,
Yeah.
you get this on your LinkedIn
The
mailbox.
worst, every
one's
sales pitch
connected.
ever, right?
Yeah. I think it'd be a good idea for us to meet. I have a great idea.
Right.
No, that's all about you, man. And
Here's all the things I know about your business and how I know I can help you, right?
yeah, and we talk about different ways, to connect with someone on their terms, and then align. Like, are my goals aligned, with your goals? Where I want to go, does that even make sense for you? And if it doesn't, move on,
Yeah.
or try to figure out where there is alignment, so you're not wasting time. Um, Again, the R area is respond. A lot of people sort of the opposite of that is sort of reacting. And what I talk a lot about in the response is, one of the tools I use in that section is called, take a beat. Like, you don't always have to be on. It's like, where is this person really coming from? What is the right way for me to respond? And it's, take a moment. You don't have to react and get all fired up.
Sure.
Be thoughtful about the way you're responding.
Yeah.
And then the other area that I talk about is prioritization, because it's, as you identified, you can't manage them all at one time.
Right.
But it's what's really, really important in my life.
Which of those relationships are the most important for me at this moment?
That's right.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then
the last is evaluate and be like, all right, I've done all this. Where am I with all this?
Yeah. It's a wonderful framework.
Yeah.
Wonderful
Mark
framework.
is really important in my life last year, but maybe you've moved to California, or you've gotten out of the business. Like, all right, maybe he's not. Or
I've got kids. You don't have kids.
Yeah, exactly.
We're living two very different lifestyles.
As with kids, all of a sudden, a priority in your life is the parents of those kids. Because your kid's going to go over their house, and they're going to have an impact on your life.
Yep.
That's who you're going to hang out with on the sideline while your son's playing soccer or football. So you prioritize and you try to figure out who's really important in your life. But again, you have to go back and evaluate. And especially I see that in sales. So it's like, I have this great client. I love him. He's doing great, but maybe he's not the one that really has, control, anymore.
Yeah.
And someone else is coming into the equation, and I have to start investing in that relationship.
So you built Apollo Bank all the way to exit, right? And this framework essentially was at the foundation of that, but without this framework,
That's
right? Like, you hadn't written this book yet.
I had to find a way to teach it over the last few years as I've worked as an advisor.
What was that process like of reviewing your career and realizing, like, wow, this framework really existed? And maybe what are some of those stories that really stood out to you as like, this is a great example of that?
Yeah. So it was, again, as I mentioned, I'm on the board of several companies and an advisor and a CEO coach, and work with board of directors. And I kept seeing this breakdown in relationships. And the easy part was strategy or finance or operations. And I just start, telling some. I'm like, I've seen this before. I've seen this pattern, and let me share my experience. Because, as you know, people don't like advice. But I would start to walk through some stories, and sometimes I had stories. And then in the book, I'd pull stories out of popular culture, out of sports. I mean, you're a sports fan. Sports is great to relate. Can you say,
Amen.
This is how Greg Popovich handled it.
Yeah.
This is how he, mentored, Tony Parker or DeJounte Murray or. Tim Duncan.
Yep.
You start to share those stories, and that's how you teach, and that's how you coach, and people are, you're not criticizing them, but you're giving them sort of this parallel story that they can relate to.
Well, so what's interesting is I think a lot of leaders struggle when there's a strong personal relationship with somebody that they work with that they have to hold accountable, right? When performance isn't there, or like, hey, we're really good friends, but we also have to be great partners, and you're kind of letting me down in the partner side of the business. I would imagine you have a ton of experience with that, being in a family business. How do you help leaders that you see run into? How does your framework apply to that? And how does it work when, like, hey, I gotta get you to come with me, but we're also really good friends?
Yeah. So I've seen the best thing to do is, really at inception. Now, you can't, if there's a problem 2 years down the road, you can't go back to inception, but you can, sort of start over. But at inception is, we're going to be crystal clear. We're friends. Our families are connected. But let's be crystal clear and put this on paper, what success looks like.
Yeah.
The Super Bowl for us means, whatever. We're going to grow our company by 15%, per year. That we're still going to remain friends. Or that we're willing to accept, like, hey, we're not going to get together for Sunday, anymore. But you're crystal clear on expectations, what the boundaries are.
Mm-hmm.
Because it may be like, hey, we can't be friends anymore, or we can't get together every Sunday
Yeah.
because we have to set some boundaries. But getting crystal clear, that's easy to do at inception.
Right.
But sometimes, I see people like we've been working together for 5 years.
We've allowed the bad habits to
This guy,
creep in.
he was my brother-in-law. He's no longer my brother-in-law. Those sort of things. Like, then you just need to have a sit down, man.
So it's a reset.
It's a reset, and you need to go back and say, we're going to start over. Let's be crystal clear. I'm going to talk.
Yep.
I'm going to write it down. You're going to listen. You're going to take a beat, and then you're going to tell me what you heard.
Yeah.
And then you're going to come back to me with, can you live by that?
I love. So you mentioned that before, that take a beat and the respond part of your framework. When you say take a beat, is it a literal beat? Is it days? Is it situational?
It's situational. At minimum, it's 2 seconds. But it's like
when time to think.
Because, and what I try, to do in my own life, and and when I coach or advise people is, you have to remove your emotion, and you have to assume the other guy's going to be emotional. That this is going to hit, whether it's you're as the authority figure, you're going to remind him of a high school teacher, his coach, his dad, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But he's going to have an emotional response. Or if you're, and what I always tell people, like when they're terminating an employee, the hard conversation is not you terminating that guy. It's when they go home and they have to tell their spouse, I lost my job today. This is what it means to it. So think about that conversation while you're, terminating the person or letting them go.
Yeah.
Because that's really what he's thinking about. So I definitely you don't have to respond immediately.
Yeah.
You don't have to be emotional, especially if you're the leader or the boss. You can say, that's a really good point. Let me think about it. I'm going to give you the respect that I'm going to think about this and be very thoughtful about it. I'm not going to be pee off about it. I'm not going to get emotional about it. And so you always have that power. Or you can say legitimately, hopefully, that's a really good point. I'm going to talk to Jake about this. I'm going to talk to Dan about this. But then you have to have the respect to them. Like you really come back to them, the next day or the next week, whatever.
And get that time back to them. That's incredible. And it's interesting because by
the way, and then sometimes, as as a coach, is you got to give the feedback right then. Like you're doing it wrong.
Right.
Like it's crystal. We agreed on this. You're doing it wrong. You can't be passive aggressive and be like, I don't want to tell him. I'll tell him next week. So, but it's hard, but it's part of leadership. You want to be a great leader, you have to master all these tools.
And so I think it's all about relationships. Is that a leadership book? Like, because it's to me, it's like this is everything.
Yeah.
This isn't just leadership. Like, this is every aspect of your life that this applies to.
Yeah. So the book is meant as a leader, as a leadership guide. When you read the book, it's all as you as a CEO need to do this. Great CEOs do this. The response of the book, surprisingly, so I have a really good friend of mine who was an early reader. He read it and he goes, I'm going to buy copies for all 3 of my kids. And I'm like, hey, you don't need to do that. And he goes, no, in this time of work from home and AI, they don't really understand that I've gotten to where I am because I've done all these things over 10, 20, 30 years. I've seen a lot of, at-home moms and been like, no, that I'm the CEO of my house. I have to manage teachers. I have to manage people that come to my house. I have a small business. I forget that there's all these relationships I manage. When I think about relationships, I think about my spouse. I think about my friends. But there's really all these different things that really matter that impact the success I have in life.
It's incredible. Is there one relationship that you would point to that you would say like most important, most influential, best relationship of all the ones that you've created through your life?
Yeah. So a couple come to mind, and those couple of people that I thought of will definitely listen to this podcast. And if I don't mention them, they may not feel so great. Why'd you mention him? I know we're close.
Right.
But it's really different aspects. And so, the obvious one is certainly my wife, who's, she just knows me and is patient and supportive, and me always being able to go back to her, be like, I'm working on this. I'm either going crazy or I'm going, full speed. She knows sort of my true self. And I think it's really important, to really is why am I doing all this? What's the grand picture? Where do I want to be when I'm 80 years old?
That alignment that you talked about, connected and aligned.
And the other piece having, sort of chapter 6 in the book, which is yourself. Like, I believe that the work I've done on myself over the last, 20 something years has made all the difference.
Yeah.
And it's helped me, stay focused, go after my North Star, not get caught up on what I think other people want me to achieve, but it's, what is this really about? So, as you know, writing a book it's a personal mission.
Cathartic, baby.
Your beach house wasn't bought on the royalties of this book, and nor I'm not buying a Ferrari based on the royalties of this book. It's a personal thing.
Yeah.
And but that, for me, that was a great investment, because I was able to think about what really matters to me, what relationships mean to me, and can this help a handful of others to just have a better life.
It's a powerful answer to mention the two most important relationships are your spouse and yourself.
Yeah.
And to mention them in that order,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think most people, and even we in our training sometime, talk about putting yourself first, because if you're not in a good place, you can't be in a good place for others. But I think in terms of the importance of relationships, if your spouse is not aligned, if not connected and aligned and respond and prioritize and evaluate, if you're not running that loop with your spouse constantly, the rest, it's so hard to do all those other things. So that's an amazing answer. Obviously, our show is called The Daily Edge, right? We look at the edge as that tiny little competitive advantage that's going to help you win over anybody else. I know relationships has been your competitive advantage throughout your career, but is there a competitive advantage? Is there an edge that you've had in building relationships with people that you would share with others?
Yeah, so I'd say my daily edge, and just in knowing you guys, I know you guys, really, you start your day a certain way, and your your dad, tell me something good, and so I try to prime my day. That's one of the things that really is sort of an intention throughout the day. And one of the things that I do is, I wake up, and even if I don't feel this, I tell myself is, today is your best friend. And I said, anything that I was worried about yesterday or in the past, can't do anything about it unless I work on it today.
Yeah.
And whatever I'm worried about in the future, I can't be in the future. I can't time travel. I can address it today. If I want a better future, I can do something today. And I realize that, today is a gift, right? And so, tomorrow's not promised. Even the rest of today is not promised. And so I really try to prime myself that way. And I think if you have that intention, and if you tell yourself, you talk about today, and today is your friend, when you view someone, you're like, this person is going to help. This person was put in my path today for some reason.
Yeah.
And I have to make the most of it. So that's, I think,
immediately changes your outlook on the day.
Yeah, it changes your outlook on relationships, and realizing I've got to work on this thing today in order to have a better future, or the desired future. So,
and as your brother Dan would say, and then a lot of squats.
Never skip leg day.
There it is. Never skip leg day. Eddie, thank you so much for joining the show.
Great to be here.
If people want to find the book, where can they get it?
Amazon.com.
Okay.
Type in Eddy Arriola, Eddy. My last name, Arriola, Arriola, or just type in "It's All About Relationships."
Awesome. And if they want to get in touch with you or find you, because they want
on LinkedIn, same name, LinkedIn, be great to connect. And I'm pretty responsive on LinkedIn, so it would be great to do that.
All right. So to take us home, look directly in that camera and say, "Let's find our edge."
Let's find our edge.